Hello and welcome to Eavesdropping at the Movies. I'm Mike.
And I'm José.
And today we're talking about a Peruvian-Russian film, or Peruvian film with a partially Russian cast and partially in Russian, called Todos somos marineros, or in English, We're All Sailors. We're all sailors. You have a particular interest in this, José, so why don't you tell us why and what it's about?
Well, my particular interest in it is that it's the debut feature film of, I suppose, a former student from the EICTV, the famous film school in Cuba.
Where you teach every year.
Yeah, where I go teach every year. And this is his debut feature, basically.
What's his name?
Miguel Ángel Moulet. He wrote and directed it. He's actually someone who specialized in script writing, actually. So I don't think he and he, he's a very good writer. I don't think he expected to be making a debut feature as a director, but I think he's extremely talented.
And so the reason that we're watching this, we watched this on a Vimeo stream that he provided you.
Yes, on a link. So yeah, I was going to hedge that a little and say, isn't Eavesdropping at the Movies coming up and going places? We're now getting like pre-release screeners.
Well, this is what I didn't know, because I didn't know anything about this. This was your kind of, come over and let's watch this. And I didn't know if it had been released or not. You told me that it's been doing the festival rounds.
It's been doing the festival rounds, and it's already won a couple of prizes. Let me check up on IMDb because
I've got it here. Festival de Cine de Lima. Premio. Actually, you better do it because it's all in Spanish.
Okay, so it's a debut feature. Can I see?
Yeah. There you go.
So okay, so he's won the Festival de Cine de Lima, the best screenplay, best fiction screenplay. He's also won the jury prize. He's been nominated for best first work at the Latin American Film Festival in Lima. In Toulouse, he won the FIPRESCI Prize, which is quite a very prestigious prize for Latin American cinema. And he's also been nominated for the Grand Prix. So, this is... The reason why I wanted to talk about it is really to get your perspective on it. But also with the idea that, we're not covering enough art cinema. There are all these films that do the festival rounds that, are often highly acclaimed and that never get into circulation in Britain, except maybe through things like Mubi. So really, I just two things. First, I wanted to open up, our horizons on what we're seeing and talking about. But also, I've seen this film before.
Oh, you have?
Yes, okay. It was screened for me at the film school in Cuba about a month ago or so.
Right. Okay.
And I really just wanted to know what you thought. I mean, I will obviously, this is our podcast, so I will tell you what I thought later. But I'm very curious for your views, and this will probably take on a kind of an interview kind of format, because I want to know what you think, and then I want to know what you think about particular things in the film.
Gosh,
did you like it?
I did like it. Yes, I did like it. I think it's very beautiful, and I like its tempo. I didn't follow everything. I don't feel like it's not elliptically told or anything like that, but there are points where I wasn't entirely sure what was going on, so I got slightly lost at points. And I don't think it's overly complicated. I think it's more my fault than the films that I got lost.
Well, we can talk about those things.
It's about, let's say what it's about, this Russian fishing ship, I think, that's stranded in a port in Peru. The company seems to have gone bankrupt. There's no money. It's a kind of minimally staffed thing. It's your main character is this guy Anatoly, or Tolya, played by Andrei Sladkov.
Yes.
His brother Vitya is played by Ravil Sadriv, and he also works on this ship. And they have to, I guess, kind of try and make a life, or they're kind of stranded, so they seem to have to be making a life on the land in Peru.
Yeah, they're in a no man's land basically, because the corporation they work for has let them loose. So basically they have been left in the ship to look after the ship, because the ship is a valuable thing. But on the other hand, they're stranded. So they're not receiving any wages, any salary. You know, they don't have any right to be in the country in Peru. So they're in this no man's land where they can't get home, but also they can't really stay where they are, or certainly not for very long without papers. Yeah, and kind of, you know, part of trying to get papers and just trying to get by is one of the things that we see in the film.
Yeah, and they know a couple of people in Peru, they've got to know a couple of people, and they already know them by the time the film starts.
Yes.
So Tito is this young lad. He's the kind of character who always has something to say, and he's got lots of energy, and he's quite involved. He's a young boy who delivers lunches.
And he's very charismatic in the film. He's played by Gonzalo Alejandro Vargas Vilela, and you know, he really livens up. Yeah, every moment he's in, I think. Yeah,
he's one of those. He's that kind of character that steals every scene he's in.
Yes.
It's a very generous role to be given, I think.
Yes.
And then there's Sonia, who is. They seem to be friends. She's older than he is.
She's been looking after Tito since he started high school.
Right.
Yeah. So we don't know very much about the background story, why he ends up with her. Yeah, but basically she's kind of his mother.
Yeah, basically behavioral.
She's raised them.
Yeah, exactly. She's played by Julia Thaves. And she and Tolia have
a relationship.
A relationship. And she's the one who makes the sandwiches. She runs this sandwich shop in the market, basically.
Yeah. It's more than a sandwich shop. It's like a restaurant that feeds people in the market and also delivers lunches and breakfasts.
Exactly. Yeah. And Tito's the one who delivers them.
Yes.
So he gets around everywhere. He knows everybody. So the film opens up on. I guess this is a spoiler. The film opens up on a scene that it turns out is actually from much later in the film.
That's right.
And I don't think it announces, you know, it doesn't do a kind of 3 weeks earlier thing.
Yes.
So you are left to figure that out later.
Yes.
The film opens up with this first person view. In fact, I didn't know anything, and I thought the film was a horror film from the start.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because it opens up on this first person camera view from Vitya, who's been I think it's Vitya, who's been
it is Vitya.
Attacked, yeah, the younger brother. And he kind of wakes up on a floor, basically, in like some sort of basement or something.
And a shot that's out of focus.
That's right, the shot's out of focus, and he looks around and kind of comes into frame, but the camera's behind him, sort of as he's looking around, and you see a wound on the back of his head. That kind of comes into focus and then leaves focus again as the camera keeps moving. It's all done in this long take, and then his brother's there, comes towards him, says, "Oh, you had me worried," or something like that. So you go, well, there's been some sort of fight or attack here, and the visual style, the colour palette is kind of muted and quite like a sickly green blue. Yeah. So I thought, this is a horror movie. Like there's a zombie attack or something, and we're seeing the aftermath, right? Okay. Like it really kind of started creeping me out. And obviously that's not how the film develops. The film is this much more sort of human drama. But I thought it was a really effective opening.
Yes.
You know, it asked me. I asked loads of questions, you know, who are these people and so on, and like it's a really, really strong opening.
Yes, good. What did you think about what do you think the themes are?
The themes, I think, are kind of self-determination and finding out the fact that these people are, as we said, stranded and lost. They don't know. They don't seem to know kind of where their home is now. They talk about going home. There's this talk of Tolia stealing the radar to sell it. Initially they think it's someone else, and he basically admits to it. And because they have no money and so on, he was going to kind of take this. He found a buyer. He was going to sell the radar, and with that money he'd be able to return home. And I think he even talks about returning home with Sonia.
That's right.
So that there's the kind of the sense of loss of place and, to some degree, identity that goes along with that in Tolia is quite kind of palpable. I kind of want to say family, but family is such a general idea, and also that the specificities of it I haven't sort of figured out, but there's obviously something going on. There's a kind of protective relationship between Tolya and his brother.
Yes.
And at one point when they're rigging the mast or whatever, they're having this conversation, and it's clear that Tolya is protective of his brother, but he says, you're an adult now, you can do what you want, but don't come crying to me if it doesn't work out. And you've got a similar-ish relationship with Sonia and Tito, where she's not his mother, Tolya's not Vitya's father, but they seem to have looked after these younger sort of companions as though they are their mother and father.
Yes. So there's that parallelism there, which I think is very neat. I think the film is about family in a way, but I think it's also about people who are stranded and alone, and who love. Like, one of what I love about this film is that you can see the feelings that all the characters have for each other. Yeah, so, for example, I was very moved by the relationship of the two brothers, yeah?
Yeah.
It's so accepting and so caring, and, there is, you can feel the love, really, yeah, and the caring. I think you can also see the same between Sonia and Tito, yeah, kind of. Yeah. And I think you can see the same thing between Tolya and Sonia, yeah, that they both really care for each other. On the other hand, he's basically announcing that he's leaving while, she's making these plans to set up a restaurant with him.
That's right.
Right? So I think, I love that kind of messiness of the film where, the love is clear and it's palpable, but life things get in the way and it's not always what you want, and and it's complicated, But I do think it's about people being fundamentally alone. That's
yeah.
What I think it's about, because Tolya is not very articulate, yeah. Sonia never says stay and do this with me, yeah. She's very nurturing, I think her offering food is a replacement for having any kind of deeper conversation, right? The Tito is clearly in trouble. There are certain things that you see beforehand, right, that indicate he's with a bad crowd, he's getting beaten up regularly, he's selling stuff in the black market, which could be dodgy, yeah. Right? There's further suggestions, the scene in the motorcycle ride, which reminded me a lot of My Own Private Idaho, right, which is, about these hustlers in Portland, right?
Yeah. There's
a sense of that as well, Tito's a hustler, basically, right?
Yeah.
So I love kind of those ambiguities, but there are also kind of differences. So, Tolya is very recessive. Vitya is obviously, there's this discussion where his brother talks about how the happiest days of their lives were when they went to visit their uncle in the country, in this house and everything. And the brother says, well, you were the first one to leave. And then mom died and the house was destroyed. In a way, they have nothing to go back to, right? But this nostalgia for home is also kind of preventing Tolya from getting on with his relationship with Sonia, right? Or making so there's this dream of home, but in the meantime, like John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're making other plans, right? Yeah, so so I loved all of that, actually. I think the only thing that I'm not too sure about is actually almost the climax of the film. Yeah, where Vitya and Tito.
Vitya and Tito
get caught fucking.
They're discovered fucking, and this is the scene that I mentioned opens the film. The aftermath of this is what opens the film.
Yeah.
So Tolya discovers them.
Yes.
And attacks them.
So what happens is that Tolya finds him. They disentangle very quickly. Yes. Tolya goes to his brother and says, what are you doing? And he says, stay away from my relationships. And he says something like, basically, you call this a relationship, right? Because it's just happened. Though there are intimations of that, right? you see the boys in the market before. You see he's been helping out. He's received a new watch from Tito, right? So, this something is hinted at as developing into this. But then what happens is that, Tito, I suppose, wants to... I mean, there's this internal homophobia where he's trying to pretend, that, he's been attacked into this or he's been sexually molested to Tolia, and goes to hit Vitya. Yeah.
Oh, right. Was that... See, this is I guess, is one of the things I didn't follow entirely.
I think that could have been filmed better, actually. I think, it's important that Tito's the one who instigates the violence.
Right.
Right. So he goes to attack him with a club or a metal thing, right? And he kicks him, right? So he kicks him once, and then he goes to attack, and then Tolia pushes him away, and then once Vitya stopped having his spasms, he goes to check on Tito, and Tito goes to hit him, and then you can tell he's a very powerful man who's been boxing, and he just vents his rage.
Tolia is beating on Tito.
Yeah, and beats him unconscious.
Yeah, while Vitya's still on the floor.
Yeah.
I think you're right, it could have been filmed better, and this was obviously one of the places in the film where I got slightly lost because I wasn't clear on what was happening in that scene entirely.
Yes. It's shot in a very wide angle with a lot of the action happening on either side of the frame in a long shot, so that you're forced to look, right, and you're forced to discover things on your own.
Yeah.
And I do think that maybe that's not the time. It's such a critical moment in the film that maybe that's not the time to get the audience to look for those things, actually. So I think, but the whole thing, I mean, the reason why Tito turns on Vitya with such violence is something that seems to come out of nowhere, right? Like, so even if he's not out, even if he's passing, even if he's ashamed of himself for being gay, I think those things could have been maybe given a stronger foundation, or kind of, made clearer dramatically, built up to. Yeah. It seems to come out of nowhere. And also the thing is that the character of Tito is so alive and sympathetic and so on, that, kind of turning like that against someone he clearly likes is...
Do you think it feels too out of character?
Yes, I think it does. What do you think?
Well, I think... I can sympathise with that point of view. I think maybe then what the film is trying to do is to kind of emphasise the strength of his kind of internalised homophobia, because in that, like, we have seen no indication of this.
Yes.
And the fact that it comes out now so violently is kind of the point.
Yes.
That it does appear to come out of nowhere. This isn't something that you've seen in him at all until now. But I can see what you mean.
I don't know. I mean, I think it's the climax of the film in a way, right? And it's the one burst of violence that we see, So I just personally would have liked that to have been more clearly developed dramatically. I mean, the film is full of very interesting ambiguities, and I like that. I like that. There are things that can resonate. That are complex, that are not quite fixed, that kind of you interpret, but then I do think that is something that I would have liked to be much clearer, However, I mean, there are things that I just love about the film, like, those whole scenes where the Tito, again, is selling stuff through the market, I think that's kind of one of the things that I just love about seeing foreign cinema, because, you're not just getting information about the character, you're getting information about a whole way of life, right? And, the jobs people do, the food people eat, how that food is delivered, what's on sale in the market.
How they talk to each other.
How they talk to each other, how they interrelate, the dishes they're buying, right? Like, it's like a menu. So I love that.
Actually, I mean, the film kind of directly approaches that scene where Tito and Vitya are chatting together, and he says, "What's this food that you?" I can't remember the name of the food, but what is that?
Yes.
And he explains it's hen, and then they say the difference between hen and rooster, and what is it in Russian, and so on. So
which also has all those, which that is feeding into what happens later, because that has all those sexual connotations, right? Yeah, kind of.
Hens and roosters.
Yes, I think there's a little bit of a sexual talk going on with the animals, right? With those discussions of the difference between hens and roosters, and not having a girlfriend, and and also kind of.
He does say. He says. He says, "What, you've never eaten a hen?"
Yes.
Mm.
Oh. Anyway, and then there's the whole thing with the dogs.
The one dog's a little flirt.
Yes, and the other one
is... The other
is...
dog is going to fuck as many bitches as he likes.
That's right.
Then he gets out.
But also, you get the feeling that the only love he's really getting is from the dogs, right?
Yeah.
So I loved all of that. I love the procession.
That's quite interesting, actually. Sorry, not that kind of... I remember when we were talking about The Shape of Water, and how it was obvious 5 seconds in that Richard Jenkins' character was gay, and not in the kind of most wholesomely portrayed because it was quite stereotypical. He's just he's holed up in his apartment, and he's got a pet. I think he's got a fish or something. And it's just all those symbols of someone who's just a lonely gay man, and you kind of see one or two of those symbols in a way here, but that idea of the dogs, him keeping his dogs and getting love from his dogs, and it's not the same thing. It's not like he's a depressed, lonely person.
No,
but that is kind of an interesting symbol that shows up in a way here, I think.
Well, I think there's quite a few things. Again, he's mixed in an underworld, which in a place where kind of homosexuality is repressed. That's the places where you can find it. It all goes underground, right? And then it kind of mixes in, with criminal elements often, and so on. So you see him in this world that is kind of like an underworld, right? There's a scene where, one of the guys he's with says, tell me when to do it, and I'll off him. I've got 4 bullets left, right? And so he's mixing with those kinds of people, right? Which obviously that doesn't have connotations of homosexuality. That he's dealing with people in an underworld. But when you combine all the things together, it begins to add up,
Yeah, creates like a picture.
And also, the buying of Vitya this watch, right?
Yes.
Where the brother's saying, don't get mixed up with him, So kind of, as you go over it in your mind, it begins, it does add up.
Do you think that when the brother sees the watch, when Tolya sees the watch, he suspects a relationship, or do you think that's just about keeping away from Tito because he's mixed up with wrong people?
I'm not sure, right? But it could be either.
Yeah.
But what I am sure of is, that he knows about his brother's sexuality, and it isn't a problem before and it isn't a problem after, right? They've been living together all these years, and it must have happened before, and he doesn't have an issue with it after, right? I think it was the fact that it was with Sonia's son that was the problem, right?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah.
Sorry, you were going to talk about the procession.
Yes, no, I kind of... So again, with this idea of this movie depicting a whole way of life, it's set in an astonishingly beautiful place, right? Which is Chimbote, which is a fishing port. I don't know where it is in Peru, but, we're not seeing the capital. We're seeing this little town, kind of on the coast, which is, obviously like a port town. Yeah, and it's just incredibly beautiful. It's got mountains and it's got sea, and it's got this beautiful dense light that you see. And, some of those images I find just stunning. Right?
Yeah, there are times when they shoot through a kind of... It's not quite a fog. You can still see everything, but it's a kind of... It's like in the distance, the air just becomes thick and light diffuses through it.
Yes.
You get these beautiful kind of rich, wide sunsets.
Yes.
And things. They look amazing.
Yes. I think the whole of that town looks amazing. And also you get to see where the kids hang out and where they play football and, kind of where they meet and so on. So I loved all of that as well.
The writer-director you mentioned is Peruvian, right?
That's right.
So he comes... These are places that he knows. This is the world that he's bringing us into.
Yeah, I think he might be from there, from Chimbote. But one of the things that he told me when I talked to him, Miguel Angel told me that the whole film was inspired by this amazing workshop that he went to, where it was a small group of 8 people, and the tutor just led a seminar, a 6-hour discussion on the opening lines of The Merchant of Venice. And they go, "In sooth, I know not why I am so sad. It wearies me. You say it wearies you. But how I caught it, found it, or came by it, what stuff 'tis made of, where it is born, I am to learn. And such a want-wit sadness makes of me, that I have much ado to know myself." Yeah, it's a great opening.
Yeah.
And he said, so this idea of sadness, that it's wearing, and that you don't know how you come by it, or or how to get rid of it, and so on. That he says was the nugget of the film. That's what started off. He says it was like the combination of what these lines are about, and then that he had read the story about Russian sailors being stranded in Peru. Right?
Right, there is a true story that this is to some extent based on.
Well, I don't know if it's... Yeah, it's just... it's totally imagined, but there were sailors stranded when a company went bankrupt, and they were stranded in a port in Peru without being able to go home, but without being able to land, right? So, these two things is what kind of, the basis of the film. And I think, that opening is so great. And you can see how it is, in the film. All the Russians are sad, they're homeless, they're nostalgic for home, they're nowhere, like they can't go back, they can't go forward, right? It's kind of, I think that's great. So likewise, I think, there are things that you don't know, but you can surmise. So Tito must be an orphan, right? Mm. Otherwise, why is he being raised by this woman, right?
There's not even any talk of his parents. He's kind of like the street dog that he takes in. He says, "I found this dog in the trash."
That's right.
And he's basically like that. That's me.
Yes. Yeah. So he's being loved and cared for and so on. But obviously, he can't tell Sonia about this other life he's leading, even though she keeps asking him, because, he keeps getting home bruised, right? So someone's beaten him up, but he doesn't say why or how. At that point in the film, I actually thought it was, something to do with his selling stuff in the black market, right? Though actually...
Well, it may have done.
It may have done, but subsequently... It also could be a homophobic attack. Yes. He ended up with the wrong person, or he solicited the wrong person, or, so I think those are all things that linger in the mind and make the film richer. I think the film is characterized by enormously long takes, right? It has my least favorite shots in cinema, which is, we now have a Steadicam, so people just use it to pursue characters everywhere, and sometimes it's very unthinking. I think this is not unthinking. I think it's purposeful. That the camera follows these characters, and then they turn around, or, then the background comes into focus. I think all of that is really very much thought through. Yeah, right?
It's quite thoughtfully done. But I can sort of see what you mean. There is something about one or two of those shots that feels quite artificial.
Yes.
You notice the shots.
Yes.
And there are others that don't. I'm thinking of when the camera follows Tito going through the market and giving lunches to people and taking money and saying hello. That feels very natural to me.
Yes, it does.
Whereas another shot which is of Vitya, and the camera follows him down the street with a sack of spuds, and he turns around, I think deliberately, just so the camera can see his face, basically. Feels very artificial, feels quite staged.
I agree. And then there are things that are just kind of beautiful, like near the end, where you're seeing Tolia through the porthole, and you don't know what's happening, right? And then, again, it comes into view. That's a trope in the film. Things are often in the background, out of focus, and then they come into view, right? And that happens over and over and over again, right? And it's ironic in a way because, you know, in the film, it's things don't come into view for the characters. They keep their secrets. And that's how, you know, they can live with each other at the end, right? And I think that's also one of the reasons why I think the film is so great in that respect, actually. You know, because there's this moment where Tolya goes to confess, I think. Yeah, he goes to see Sonia, and you think that he's going to tell her, I killed your brother.
Yeah.
Right. And then, you know, she's obviously bothered by not seeing Tito. And so she's got other things on her mind. And also, she thinks he's leaving her anyway, right? Because they're going back to Russia. So she keeps interrupting. She keeps saying, do you want some food? I have your shirts here. Take them away. Kind of, blah, yeah, give this to that, yeah? So I think he tries to confess and is prevented from doing it by her, right? And then at a certain point, he just doesn't, right?
Yeah.
So, and which means that at the end, all three can live together, but with this huge secret in the middle of it, right? So, which again is, I think, is another thing about the film that is just so interesting. So, you know, kind of, yeah, this decision, certainly for Sonia, she feels her life is going to be better with them. She's had a loss, right? She needs family and help. On their end, you know, kind of, he has done something terrible by accident, right? He didn't mean to, but nonetheless it happened, right? And so he's got atonement and amendments to make, right? And I suppose the best thing he can do now is be with her and help her, right? In this restaurant. I mean, kind of nothing's going to bring the kid back. But on the other hand, it is like something that, you know, it's quite a secret to have to keep.
Yeah, I'm yes.
And
I was kind of unclear on exactly what the secret was. I suppose this came from my having got the wrong end of the stick with the sex scene and the attack sort of scene.
Well, Tolya basically kills him.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, not initially, because actually there's this beautiful moment where, you know, I think the film goes to quite deliberate lengths to absolve Tolya as much as possible of the blame, because you know, he punches him, right, very hard, but he's not dead initially, right? So obviously he's caused damage, and then he tries his best to go help him, and he rows in the middle of nowhere so that his flare could be seen and the hospital boat can come over, but his flare is drowned out by the fireworks. You know, because it's the village feasts, so basically there's nothing he can do to help. Yeah.
That was basically the sense I got. Yeah.
Yeah.
Although, as I say, my understanding of that, because what I saw in the fight scene incorrectly was an attack by Tolya, a homophobic attack by Tolya. Then I kind of went on to see that as a kind of regret behaviour that spoke to his regret of what he did.
Let's pause it and see it again. Let's just go to that moment, because if we find that moment, I think it only lasts about 2 minutes. So
yeah. No, I mean, I am wrong. I know I'm wrong.
No, but I'm just saying, kind of, you know, let's just see if we can get something else out of that scene, right?
Okay, so let's pause it here.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have just revisited the scene in which Tolya discovers Vitya and Tito having it away, and an argument ensues. So what happens is Tolya says, "Oh, this again." Basically, I thought I told you not to hang out with him, and it's Tito who says, "Sissy Russian, you fucked it up," and attacks Vitya. Vitya falls to the floor. He starts spasming. Tolya goes over to help him out, and he pushes Tito away. Tito comes back with a stick and attacks Vitya some more.
Yes.
And so Tolya responds by punching Tito twice in the head.
That's right. So first Tito kicks the fallen Vitya.
Yes.
Then he goes at him with a stick, right? And then he goes at him kind of one more time. You know, so yeah, it's kind of, I think it's important that it's Tito's own self-hatred that's driving it. Whereas, actually Tolia is,
protecting his brother.
Yeah, basically.
Entirely.
And
the punches that he plants on Tito are big, strong punches, as you said. Like, he's a forceful, strong guy, and you see him earlier in the film actually working out with a punching bag. Yeah. He's a guy who can. He's a fighter, but clearly he didn't intend.
No, and also, it was his third attack. His brother is having a spasm on the other side. He needs Tito to be quiet, and get out of the way until,
exactly.
Yeah, the brother's okay, right? So you can see that what motivates him to, that it hasn't come out of a mean place. He hasn't planned to kill him. It's an accidental kind of manslaughter of a person he obviously likes very much. Right, and who he's connected to through his love of his sister, right? So at the end, kind of, that's a big secret to keep. That you are the cause of the death of someone the person you love thinks of as their son, right? And now, of course, you don't know. Will this be a secret forever? Will it come out? Is that something that's going to always be in this relationship? Or is it something that they can all live with and accommodate? Right. Yeah, but it kind of, I think it's a beautiful ending.
A wonderful, wonderful shot where Tolia accompanies Sonia to the police station where they're going to file a missing persons report.
Yes.
And there's this wonderful shot of Sonia's on the left, tears in her eyes, and Tolia's on the right, just looking almost blank, like he knows something clearly, because he does, but kind of no emotion. And at one point, in one sense, you can look at it as the film is, in a sense, drawing on a sort of difference, maybe in stereotypical terms, between a kind of Russian general mindset and a sort of Latin general mindset. One is of stoicism and of not speaking and of not making emotions clear, and the other is of being quite open with emotions and always talking. And what you were saying about Sonia, she talks to cover up not having things in her life or not being able to talk about meaningful things, whereas in another sense the Russian characters just don't talk when they when they have things that they want to cover up or not reveal.
Well, they don't talk much unless they have something they want to say.
Exactly. One thing that I can tell you about that scene that we just revisited, having revisited again, I can remember that when I watched it the first time, part of the reason that I missed what was actually going on is that I was distracted by having seen the aftermath to it earlier, and because I went, oh, this is that scene then, and so from what happened, what I saw at the start of the film, I was trying to combine it with what was happening now, and kind of, oh, that's where he was, so this is what he, so basically, that actually it was detrimental. Because as much as I think that opening, as I said, was effective in kind of setting some kind of mood and asking questions, what I would also say is that I don't think it actually is beneficial ultimately to the entire film, because I think what it then sets up, I don't think it's necessary for the film to start there. It can start at the start of its story. And the fact that it kind of asks these dramatic questions right from the beginning, why has he got a wound, who are these people, what's going on, is then immediately kind of forgotten by the film. Do you know what I mean? It kind of starts at its most dramatic moment and then just forgets it.
Yeah.
So as much as it was effective in the moment,
yes,
I think it's probably actually a negative for the entire film.
Yes, I think you're probably right. For myself on my first viewing, to be honest, I actually didn't even make the connection. I kind of, by the end of the film, I'd kind of forgotten that that's how it started. So for me, it more just set a mood, right?
Yeah.
It's out of focus. Kind of what's happening. There's a man turning over. He's very thin. You could see the bones sticking out of, like the hip bone, and then all of a sudden, he comes into view and there's a wound, and then it seemed like the story started. I mean, I didn't realize on my first viewing that, that was a flashback or that the film flashed back.
I kind of worked out reasonably early that was a flashback. Just because I thought, well, mostly because no one was talking about what happened. It didn't seem to have had any repercussions.
Yes.
In what immediately followed. So I thought, this is out of place somewhere.
Yes.
and also because it is a trope to start a film in that way, although it doesn't say 3 weeks earlier. There was a line in Rick and Morty where this character he says, "You have to read my screenplay." And the screenplay starts off with its most dramatic moment and then goes cut to 3 weeks earlier, and it's like ugh. And basically the show is mocking that thing of it's a cinematic cheat to start at the most dramatic moment and then go, and now we're going to show you how we got there to keep you hooked. So that's not exactly what this film does, because it doesn't say you'll find out later how this happens explicitly, but it's nonetheless doing something similar, giving you a hook, a dramatic hook that is kind of unearned from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay. Like I said, I didn't even notice it the first time. I just thought it set up an interesting mood, and also I read it like symbolically, the wound.
Of course you did.
So one of the things that I think is so interesting about the film, because I think Andrei Slokov, who plays Tolya,
Andrei Sladkov,
is a very powerful presence. Yeah, he's just a presence in the film. And actually, what I was told was that all of the actors except Sonia are non-professionals.
Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah. So to get kind of these performances out of non-professional actors, I think it's just amazing. I think because I think they're wonderful. The only other moment that I find a bit weak, or not weak, but that could be a lot more effective for me, is the moment where that woman sings the song in the boat. Because obviously it's meant to evoke. It's in Russian. You don't hear the lyrics. The lyrics are not subtitled. You get the feeling that it's meant to evoke a nostalgia. It's a sad song.
It's a song from home.
It's a song from home. And you hear the word Ruski, right? So, kind of. But for me, that should have been like a transcendental moment in the film. A moment of beauty and sadness and I just think the singer isn't good enough.
Fair enough.
I would have liked some, like an amazing voice to sing that, right? And to evoke that feeling through song, right? Which I think it kind of does, but it's not powerful enough to make it a moment.
Yeah, you can tell what the scene is supposed to be about.
Yes.
But it doesn't quite, it's not quite executed to evoke it.
That's right, And I think that becomes, so I suppose for me, those two moments, which, stand out because I think the rest of the film, in many ways, is so beautifully realized. Like, all of those scenes, like in the market, the fireworks, the procession, I love them so much, actually. I think they're so amazing that actually it kind of galls that these two are not so successfully realized. I like the long takes. I like the slowness of the long takes. The way. So, for example, when Sonia and Tolya are in bed, right, that it allows you to discover things, to think about things, right? Kind of, what is their relationship? Kind of, what do they mean to each other? How comfortable are they with each other? Yeah, that kind of. That it unfurls in a long take, their conversation, I think to me works very, very well. Yeah.
And to me it had that sense of that post-coital scene, do you remember from Shoplifters?
Yes.
The one Palme d'Or, the Japanese film, where it's just like, I think we've said before about if actors are naked and you can see their taboo areas, then like you're just distracted, but films have to kind of come up with ways of. There are other ways of showing naked people in love, being naked with each other, that are also kind of tactful or not distracting, and this does that. Like you get that these two are in love. They have affection for each other. They're sharing. She just kind of drapes herself over his body.
Yes.
The way that the film does that. I mean, I hope I don't sound like a prude when I say that, because I think it's not an issue of I don't want to see genitals, but I think it's a case of when you do. This is something that Robert Webb from Mitchell and Webb said, because he was naked in a film called Confetti, and he said the problem is I was competing for attention with my own cock.
Yes.
I think that's kind of the issue. Like you just are distracted. You don't have the attention.
Yes.
So I think this film, rather like Shoplifters, finds a really nice, delicate, interesting, beautiful way of showing these naked people. Yes.
Anyway, I mean, I think it's such a good film, and actually, I just think it's an amazing work, for a first film, and one which clearly doesn't have the biggest budget, but actually looks very beautiful and is very expressive, and also, I just think I want to see more films like these, and I want more of these films, to be shown and to circulate, because even though, I love popular cinema, and I think popular cinema is deep also, it's not that popular cinema lacks depth, but a lot of it does, and actually I think a film that tries to work through what it is to be human in particular situations, and things like, the striving for connection in the midst of always being in a certain sense alone, and working out what that means to these particular characters, and showing us these new places, these new ways of being, these different ways of life to our own, I think are just so important. I think the film does all of that really beautiful. I think Chimbote, the city, should give Miguel Angel a prize for promoting it, because in a most banal way, one of the things that I felt when watching the film was, isn't this a beautiful place? I'd love to go there. I'd love to see that. To see what that looks like live.
Yeah. Well, it's the only bit of Peru I think I've ever seen outside of Machu Picchu.
Well, there you go. Aren't you glad I introduced you? Absolutely. All right. So, would you recommend it?
Yeah, certainly. I can see why it's been winning prizes, and if it comes around, you should definitely see it.
It isn't in release yet, though I am hoping that it will be shown in the UK at some point, I'm sure. But I just want to signal that this is a really, really good film. It deserves to be seen, and it deserves to be shown. And I hope, someone in the UK brings it over.
Yeah, and I should say we're very grateful to Miguel Angel Moulet,
yes,
the writer-director, for giving us the opportunity to see it.
Yes.
Because, it's probably not that likely to come to Birmingham very soon, at least.
Yes.
And, as you say, it's on the festival circuit, so you don't know exactly where and when it will be popping up.
Yes, and if there are other distributors around listening to this, you should take note. So thank you very much for listening. We are eavesdropping at the movies.
Final thing is, because you forgot to mention his name and you wanted to, the cinematographer.
Oh, yes.
You wanted to mention his name.
Yes. Well, a couple of things, actually, that I want to mention. So, first of all, Camilo Soratti's cinematography is just beautiful. It really is. It's expressive and it's beautiful, and he captures the light in Chimbote in a way that is just, fitting in with what each scene is trying to express, but also just a joy to behold. It's very intense and dense light, but also quite melancholy, and just the images alone are our reason to see the film. The other thing that we haven't discussed that I actually wanted to, it's one of the rare films that has no extra diegetic sound. I don't know if you noticed.
Yeah, no music.
It has the only music that you hear is diegetic one, right? And actually, I think that works quite powerfully, right? So because I think the sound is doing quite a lot of the work in the film. Particularly in the scenes of the boat and the sea, right? So where you're at, and where you're at's relationship to the outside is all being indicated to you by sound. Yeah, the waves rolling, the feet, the sounds of the steel on the boat.
And I suppose in a way it's the lack of music, lack of soundtrack music that speaks to the kind of sort of emotional isolation that is basically felt through basically every character. I mean, the idea that the film is similarly kind of introverted and keeps itself to itself and isn't kind of emphasizing the emotion, because that's what music essentially does. Emphasizing emotion heightens things.
Yeah.
So the fact that it doesn't do that. On the other hand, the lack of diegetic music is kind of something I would expect from a film like this, in a way. I think it's something that I've seen before. If you think back to something like Custody, that French film, I don't remember specifically. So I don't remember specifically whether there was diegetic music or not, but I doubt there was.
It's very
it has
rare.
That similar kind of feeling.
It's very rare in films to have no soundtrack.
It doesn't strike me as that unusual for this. I must say, this kind of movie, basically an art movie.
Well, maybe it's because it works so well in this film.
Yeah.
But actually, I can't remember another example.
Okay.
You know,
Well, I'll have to
of
get
recent films. Yeah. You know. So.
But it's certainly effective.
Yeah, it's very effective in this film. It's another of the things that the film just does so well. I would highly recommend it, and I really hope that someone in the country picks it up. And I'm really so pleased and just pleased that you're always wary when kind of friends of yours write books or whatever, or make movies. It's like kind of you almost don't want to see them really, because you're so afraid that they'll be bad, right? So I was just so delighted that this is so good and has been winning prizes and has been doing so well, and that actually repays a second viewing.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so
and it pays a first viewing. I really enjoyed watching it, and as you say, I mean, I don't know this man at all. But I know that he's someone who and so in that sense of look at what my friend made. He's like, oh God, what if I don't like it?
Well, no. I was aware of that danger.
Yes.
But then also I thought, just in terms of criticism, I also, and in terms of just being honest about what we see, then I thought, I wanted your input, because then you also think, are you feeling so warmly about it, and do you think it's so great, because it's someone who made it, right? Yeah. Or is it really, good, yeah? So that's also why I wanted your input, yeah, as a check on me. So had you thought very differently to me, then that would have also made an interesting conversation, I think.
Sure. Fair enough.
We are eavesdropping at the movies. We are on
iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. On social media, we're on Twitter and Facebook, and our website is eavesdroppingatthemovies.com.
Yes. Thank you very much for listening.
Bye-bye.